Well, a very warm welcome to this exclusive Enlit Europe interview with the Secretary General of Hydrogen Europe, Jorgo Chatzimarkakis. Jorgo, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Well, I know you would have loved to have been in Milan with us now, but you've got a competing commitment. But nonetheless, I think it's vitally important that since hydrogen is going to be a big topic of discussion in Milan over the next few days, we hear your views as representative of the leading advocate for hydrogen technology and policy in Europe. So can I get started by just asking a question? If, as I imagine you believe, hydrogen is going to play a key role in achieving net zero in the energy sector, how much growth do you think is going to be required, by that magic date of 2050?
Well, growth and to predict so many years is always a very difficult question. But the analysis that we see, it's not one analysis, it's a lot of them, shows that until 2050, we might see a replacement of coal, oil, but also natural gas by 20%. So 20% of the overall energy, mobility and heating system will then rely on hydrogen, which is quite a chunk. So it's big, and that's around the figure that we see until then.
Yep, 20% is a big chunk. So where do you see that falling? Where will be the most effective use of hydrogen?
Well, hydrogen, fortunately, is a multi-talent. It's like you're doing a decathlon, so it might not be the best performer in sprint. That might be electricity and battery, but on a very short distance. So hydrogen is a good performer. It's a multi-talent in many different fields. We could argue that the low-hanging fruit, so the immediate efficiency of hydrogen is giving in the industrial sector, where hydrogen already is used as a feedstock today based on a fossil production. So in fertilizer, biggest customer in the world, or in the petrochemical industry, so refinery, second biggest in the world, biggest in Europe, you would replace the gray hydrogen, as we call it, which has a damaging effect to climate, because 1 kilo of hydrogen produces 10 kilo of CO2. But you could replace it by green or by clean hydrogen. And then you have an immediate positive effect. And that's a low-hanging fruit, because here hydrogen is needed anyhow. Additionally, there are other industries that are now, switching to hydrogen. They are based on coal, like the steel industry so far. But if you reduce iron ore to get out the oxygen, not only with carbon monoxide, coal-based, but with hydrogen, you have no harming effect, no CO2, you have water. So, and this is done currently. So the steel industry, the chemical industry is moving into that direction. And here you will see big volumes. But we are at the same time developing applications in heating or in mobility that are ready to use. I have inaugurated a few weeks ago, together with the CEO of Iveco, Gerrit Marx. We have inaugurated his first factory of hydrogen trucks. So as of January, 2 hydrogen trucks will be produced there. What do you do with them? So you don't want to abate CO2 in mobility? Yes, you will, and you want. And that is why in parallel, there will be plenty of applications that are now growing and that will be ready to use when the big volumes are there. We expect the big volumes as of 25 until 35. So that's basically the ramp-up phase. At the moment, we are in the kickoff phase. And then these applications, also in the heating sector, will be in the markets and will be consumed by citizens, by normal people.
Okay, you mentioned the building and sector. Obviously, the existing gas industry is placing a lot of bets on being able to continue supplying a hydrogen mix or a hydrogen-based gas. I mean, how realistic is it that we're all going to be heating our homes with hydrogen? In the UK, we've seen a big investment in heat pumps. I mean, where do you see that playing out?
I could ask another question. How realistic is it to build upon the power grids, helping all these heat pumps to heat? It's two questions. And the point here is, and I think policymakers all over the globe, by the way, have understood that it is very, very important to have a redundancy. It's a redundancy. That's when you're not a native speaker. A redundancy. What does it mean? If you have a second grid or a second possibility, if there is a blackout in one, and in power grids we have seen blackouts, and if we just put all our eggs in this basket, we might depend very much on that. So redundancy is anyhow always a good strategy. That's one. But second, why, and that's what policymakers see, why don't we make use of existing infrastructure, like the gas infrastructure, that does not need to be built up from scratch, but it can, so to say, be refurbished, retrofitted, repurposed with much less costs than to create a new infrastructure like in the power grid. And this is why I'm answering your question with another question. And basically, yes, we should look into what are the costs of the retrofitting, and they are a quarter of building something new in general. With newer pipelines, it's even much less because you just need to change the compressors and not the coating of the pipeline. However, it makes sense to use this because no stranded assets, it's another life. And I can fully understand the gas sector saying, okay, we are ready to go out of the fossil thing, or we are ready to make the fossil thing very clean. We know that we need to invest into the infrastructure, but it's an investment that is, well, overseeable, so it's not too much. And it gives another 100, 150, 200 years of existence for this infrastructure. Zero emission, why shouldn't we do it? And that's what they decided, and that's why I see it's very, very smart to do it. It's very stupid. It's very stupid, and I say clearly, to exclude sectors from access to hydrogen. Everybody has the right to hydrogen, and we should not let policymakers decide by themselves that they think it's not a good option because there are heat pumps. Yes, there are. But have you ever tried to put a heat pump into an older house? I would always say, please, ladies and gentlemen, do use heat pumps for your new houses. That's what I'm saying as a hydrogen guy. Try to, if you build up something new, try to use heat pumps because they are efficient and they are good. But if you have to refurbish an old house, if you want to make an older house zero emission, then please look also into the use of boilers based on hydrogen, or even better so, in some cases, because you then get also electricity, fuel cells based on hydrogen. And the fuel cell have one big advantage. They can be used even now. So even now, based on a fossil gas grid, they could be used, unfortunately, with a production of CO2, but you don't need to then change once you invest it into the fuel cells. You don't need to change this infrastructure. You can keep it while the infrastructure gets another content, hydrogen, which is zero emission. So that's fantastic. That's wonderful. And that gives us some flexibility also when we look into investment plans.
Great answer, and you've got some home improvement tips along the way. Thank you for that. Can I just ask about? I mean, I suppose we're talking about green hydrogen for the most part, but you did mention grey hydrogen and there's blue hydrogen. Do you see a role for other types of hydrogen with abatement with CCS?
Yes, basically, what we as Hydrogen Europe try to do is to get away from the color code, because blue, by the way, is very different things at the moment. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to see a world of carbon emitting hydrogen, which we don't want. And we want to have no carbon. And I say again, NO, no carbon hydrogen. And there are different ways to produce no carbon hydrogen. Renewable production is, of course, one, super sexy, super attractive, and super good. And we all like it, and nobody's against it, of course. Well, some mammals in the sea might be against it, some whales, but because of offshore. But you see, that is a no-brainer. We will see a lot of renewable infrastructure, and we will see a lot of renewable hydrogen production. However, it takes some time. And there are other possibilities to produce already now a no-carbon hydrogen, one of which is the so-called ATR, the autothermal reactor technology, which yields 90% minimum, 90% decarbonization of natural gas. The SMR plus CCS, so the steam methane reforming plus CCS, delivers some 60%. And my association advocates very much the 90% minimum threshold, because we believe that we can go into this direction and we should go into this direction. Then there is pyrolysis. Pyrolysis is a technology that splits natural gas, but also waste, into hydrogen and carbon solid. No emitting carbon, but carbon solid, very important feedstock for carbon fiber, for graphite, for graphene, or you simply bury it, but you can really use it as a feedstock. And then you have clean hydrogen. And finally, we should not forget a very, very important source of hydrogen is also biomass. I know I in my previous life, political life, I saw the up and down of the biofuels. And I know that this is a very sensitive issue. Why? Because there's a lot of land use involved. If you go and produce biomass at the seaside, so in the oceans, and 70% of our planet are covered by oceans, and if you then take into account that algae are growing 7 to 8 times faster than plants on land side, then it makes sense to say, okay, let's then produce biomass, biogas, and biomethane. And if you put this into a normal steam methane reformer, you have a green hydrogen and you have a CO2 that is absorbed from the atmosphere. It's biogenic. So if you then use it industrially for the beer, Coca-Cola, or other industrial uses, you have even a minus effect. And that is very important to see that there are plenty of different possibilities to harvest no carbon hydrogen, and that's the way we go.
Okay, well, quickly moving on. We've all these things, these technologies at the moment are expensive, I guess, but we see a trajectory of prices coming down. Do you foresee a sort of similar trajectory as we saw with the solar PV technology? That required a certain amount of policy inducement, if you like. Are we in need of policies centrally to make that happen in hydrogen technology?
Well, without any doubt. I mean, that's one of the nice little things in our life that we can rely on, that if you go to scale and if you scale up the volume, that the price will go down. Indeed, we talk about the champagne price that we see now in hydrogen needs to go down to Prosecco, which I, by the way, prefer much more. But
or in Italy, so what would you couldn't say anything else?
That's it. And then we would need to go down to table water and even less. The point here is we will see prices going down. We see already around the globe different production costs of hydrogen. I mean, whereas in Europe, Northern Europe, they are at the moment between 3 and 6 euro per kilo. If you go to Spain, you have already 2.5, or Morocco 2.5. If you go to Chile, you would end up at €1 already in the Atacama Desert. So it really depends where you produce your hydrogen. So there are price differences already. However, hydrogen is about to become a global commodity. There will be a global spot market, hopefully in Europe. And my bet is it will be in Rotterdam, so in the Netherlands. And Some other currencies might forgive me that, but we Europeans hope, of course, it will be denominated in euro. And then you can see how this price really goes down. However, carbon content will be the new currency. So the carbon content of this hydrogen, which needs to be taken out, and we just discussed different technologies to do that, that will also determine very much the price. But there will also be different prices for CO2. There's good CO2, there's bad CO2. Is it fossil, is it biogenic? But that's another story. However, hydrogen as such will have its price and its derivatives, because hydrogen is basically one of the driving forces also for other markets. Synthetic fuels, ammonia, which can be used as a synthetic fuel or as a feedstock in the fertilizing world. And all this is interrelated and will have a quite big impact on the price as such. Not to forget storage capacities. We see actually the price of natural gas being quite high all over the globe, but especially in Europe. Especially why? Because we did not have enough reserves. So if we are smarter and also try to think much in advance and produce hydrogen and store it in big site caverns all over Europe, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean, you have sub-maritime site caverns. If we do that as Europeans, we will have an impact on pricing. So you see, it's all a question of a very interrelated, complex world, but it will be in the end volume that creates this price minimization, price digression, which we all hope for.
We could talk about this for a lot longer. Fortunately, over the next few days, hydrogen is going to be a big talking point here in Milan. Just finally, Jorgo, I mean, Enlit has been set up with the ambition to sort of create a meeting point of everybody involved in the transitioning energy sector. How important do you think it is for the hydrogen sector to sort of make wider connections in the industry?
First of all, these meeting points are crucial, are milestones in a development of a new world. We did change the course as Europeans, very much so. If I think of this idea of changing the course, I always think also of Franz Timmermans, so the EU Commissioner, Vice President, first Executive Vice President of the Commission, who really had this idea and believes in hydrogen as a rock star. And this is what it is about. You have now this rock star, fine, but there are plenty of technologies that relate to this new rock star. We talked about boilers, we talked about fuel cells, stationary fuel cells. We will have plenty of need of measurement, how to measure the purity of hydrogen, how to filter hydrogen, especially in Italy, where you are at the moment. There is the idea of using blending into gas pipelines, blending of pure hydrogen, and make it then non-pure anymore, is a big topic as a transition technology to transport hydrogen cheaply. But then you need filters, and there are many ideas to filter it out again. I put it very simply. So this is why Enlit and these kind of exhibitions, and especially this Enlit, is for us a very, very crucial also roadmap to understand where are we, what are possible customers, what are possible new markets, and sometimes the creativity of these exhibitions leads also to new ideas. And that's why we are happy to be a partner, and that's why we were very happy to have already been part of this development over the last years. And we wish all the success for Enlit now and in the future. It's quite closely related also to hydrogen, and we are happy about that.
Jorgo Chatzimarkakis, Secretary General of Hydrogen Europe, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with Enlit Europe today.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you very much.